Hello and welcome to our special edition Thursday night ticket special edition college football kickoff with Matthew Weatherby. How's it going, Matt? You ready for another day of college football here?
Absolutely.
What hat is that?
This is the Rome Emperors. It's the single A affiliate of the Braves.
Okay. We got a game 7 tonight too as well, and we got college basketball starting. A lot of stuff going on this weekend and next week, and all kinds of stuff. We already had some big games. Memphis, really the only ranked team that played. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday with a big win over Rice. North Carolina got a big win against Syracuse. The Syracuse quarterback, the freshman, did not have a good game. But right away, 12 o'clock window here, some big games. Ohio State hosts Penn State. Vanderbilt plays Texas, a big game for Vanderbilt. Miami, SMU, Houston, West Virginia. Ohio State at basically 18.5-point favorite. I guess the clear game in that window that everyone's probably going to be looking at is Vanderbilt, Texas, correct?
Yeah, probably. I think that Penn State-Ohio State game is probably going to be a little closer than people think. I don't think Penn State's going to win by any means, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than 18.5 points.
What do you think about this? Vanderbilt, obviously at this point, I was looking at the breakdown, the college football week 10 preview, and they had the playoff tiers on ESPN, and basically Indiana, Ohio State, and Texas A&M are at least 93% chance to make the CFP playoff. And then there's the second tier with Alabama, Ole Miss, Oregon, Georgia Tech, BYU, all above 50%. And then that tier 3 is teams that are basically like 50% down to like 35%, where it's Texas Tech, Miami, Vanderbilt, Notre Dame. Obviously, Vanderbilt cannot lose here. And these teams, in these tier 2s and tier 3s, one loss might kill them at this point or knock them out, or really kind of a lot of stuff would have to happen. I mean, you basically, looking at this, and Texas is a favorite here at home. Vanderbilt's got to win this, right, to stay in it.
Yeah, just because you look at Vanderbilt's wins and what they have across the board isn't exactly great. I would say maybe their best win is on the road at South Carolina. And then they played what turns out to be, which, people didn't, I guess, think it as much at the time. But 2 weeks ago, LSU was a fine football team and a good win. At home, it doesn't look very good. The same can be said for Missouri without Bo Perbula, because that's really how they beat them mostly. So those are two. They don't really have a good win that they can point to on the resume and say like, hey, look at what we've done. I think going on the road to Texas, even though Texas is down a little bit this year, is one that can kind of put a stamp on their season and have them pointed in the right direction, because from here on out, they face Auburn at home, they face Kentucky at home, and then they go on the road to Tennessee. So if they win this one, then they win the next two. I think they'll be all right.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. I mean, these games, and we're in November, but look, I mean, there's still so to even look at the top 12 at this point is basically, other than a couple of teams is usually, I mean, there's so many teams are going to win and lose and get in and get out and, all this stuff. I mean, there's so many games still to be played. I mean, we're basically, we go to week 14, which is the the round Thanksgiving games, and then there's still another the college games and the playoff game. I mean, there's so much stuff to go. So I think to predict other than, Ohio State, who's probably not going to lose more than 2 games. They might not lose any. Is interesting. The 3:30 kickoffs, I'll not include Louisville at Virginia Tech, and that is their 3:00 kickoff, and they're still in the race there. And a lot of ranked teams playing, Indiana's at Maryland, Georgia at Florida, Louisville at Virginia, Notre Dame at Boston College, Texas Tech at Kansas State, Virginia at Cal. There's a lot of there's 6 teams that are ranked, and they're all on the road there, and they're all, other than Indiana at Maryland and Georgia at Florida, Notre Dame, Texas Tech, Virginia, Louisville, all, from 12th to 16th in the rankings, all still needing some wins to get in. And, a little bit tricky tests on the road. Texas Tech at Kansas State could be tricky. Notre Dame's favored by 30.5. Virginia at Cal, 5.5. When you look at those games and the 3:30 kickoffs, do you see one game as maybe an upset watch?
Upset watch, not overly, really.
You think all those teams, the ranked teams, get it done today?
The only 3:30 game that I would point to as a potential upset watch would be Georgia, Florida.
Okay,
that's really it. Like when I look at
the interim coach,
I don't really even know, to be honest with you. But what I do know is that it's a team coming off of a bye week. They fired their head coach. Their offense is going to look different, but they've got some key injuries. But I said at the start of the year, and I stand by it. Florida has still one of the better talent rosters in all of the country. That didn't leave when Billy Napier left. If anything, you may get a better feeling and understanding of the talent roster that Florida has now that offense will change some with him out.
I think, it's for me, those games, it's always tough to go to Blacksburg, but, the game being at 3:00, I think it's a little bit different at night. The atmosphere is a little bit tougher to play in. Louisville's starting to play well now. I think that's probably, Louisville probably wins that. I mean, I don't even know if it's, touchdown, 2 touchdowns, but they'll find it. Indiana's going to annihilate Maryland. Notre Dame's going to annihilate Boston College. Texas Tech at Kansas State. I mean, it's something, we talked about this a little bit too. Like Kansas State, remember they were ranked at the beginning of the season, and they do have some talent, and they're at home. For me, maybe that could be an interesting game.
It could be. I think when you look at the ACC and the Big
numbers, 12, what's that?
I said I think when you look at the ACC and the Big 12, like some upsets don't really surprise you.
And they're all a lot of these teams are very similar in talent level, and I wouldn't be stunned if Texas Tech, once again they're fighting to get into this, and probably. For a lot of these teams, Louisville, Texas Tech, Notre Dame, Notre Dame's probably not going to lose another game, but they have other stuff that is going against them because, these other teams will get in ahead of them, automatic qualifiers and whatnot. But, I was just looking at the standings for some of these leagues, the American. Memphis with a big win last night, but Navy still leads that. South Florida kind of blew it last week. Temple at 5-3 is very. It's good to see Temple good. As a Philly guy, I always like to see them kind of playing well. The Big 12, once again, the Big 12. There's 5 ranked teams there. Utah plays Cincinnati. We'll get to that. BYU is in the top 10 and still 8-0. I mean, obviously, if BYU wins out, they're in the playoffs. And then Conference USA, And the one that we always look at, Mountain West. I mean, everybody's beating each other up. Everybody's got losses and stuff like this. San Diego State's won 5 in a row. They're 6-1. UNLV's still 6-1. So just ahead of that, just ahead of looking at the 7:00 games there, just kind of wanted to look at that. But 7:00 games, it's a little bit different. The home teams, Ole Miss is at home against South Carolina, Michigan at home against Purdue, Tennessee's at home against AT&T, Oklahoma, Georgia Tech's on the road against North Carolina State, and North Carolina State's played well in their losses at times. USC at Nebraska. Clearly the big game there is Tennessee, Oklahoma. Probably an elimination game at this point. I mean, there's a few of these elimination games today. Straight up, Oklahoma, Tennessee, both ranked 18th and 14th. So they're right in the middle of this thing. If they win out and do some stuff, they could get in. If they lose another game, they're probably out. That's your highlight game in the night window, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm also going to be very interested in paying attention to that Georgia Tech at NC State game, because Georgia Tech's been close a couple of different times this year. They're favored by 5.5. I will say it was 4.5 yesterday, so something they've gotten some money in on Tech minus 4.5 to move it to 5.5. But yeah, Oklahoma and Tennessee, this is an elimination game right here in the SEC at 7:30, because you got 2 6-2 teams. Tennessee, they can bounce back outside of their 2 losses, which were to Georgia at home in overtime and then on the road at Alabama. They haven't played a whole lot of anybody, and so people kind of don't know what to make of Tennessee. They're 2 opportunities they've lost. All the other ones they've taken advantage of, but they haven't really been great opportunities. This one's kind of in that middle ground. And then for Oklahoma on the other side, they showed their weakness on defense last week. They have a really good one, but Ole Miss was still able to score, and they're going into Neyland Stadium, which is one of the loudest stadiums in the country. I just think it's hard. I'm still not sure if John Mateer is 100% healthy for Oklahoma to go in here and beat Tennessee tonight.
I have a question for you, because I'm looking at the standings here in the SEC. Texas A&M 8-0, 5-0 in the conference. Alabama 5-0, 7-1. Georgia 4-1, 6-1. Ole Miss 4-1, 7-1. Vanderbilt 3-1, 7-1. Tennessee and Oklahoma right now are 6-2, and they're both, they're still on the cusp of this. But I just, is there gonna be 6 SEC in this playoff? I don't see how, unless a lot of these other teams lose a couple games and stuff. I don't see how Tennessee and Oklahoma find a way in unless a lot of stuff has to happen. Is that kind of your feel for it right now?
Well, Tennessee also kind of controls what they do, right?
Yeah. If they win out,
they play Vanderbilt last weekend of the season this year at home. They win this game, they beat Vanderbilt at home. Then Vanderbilt drops 2 losses, and all of a sudden you'd exchange.
And you lose head-to-head to you lose the head.
Then you win that head-to-head matchup. So I think Tennessee kind of controls their own destiny in terms of what they're able to do. I don't know how many SEC teams they'll let in. I feel like the collection of Ole Miss, A&M, Alabama, and Georgia, all 4 of those teams don't have to play each other for the remainder of the season. There's no interwebbing there, and so they all 4 could very well make it. And I think if those 4 make it, then you're probably looking at, all right, now we're talking about potentially a 5th team, not necessarily shoe-in though for 5.
Yeah, it's tough. People are talking about 5 or 6, and it's just like, man, I don't think you can get half of one league as half the playoff being from one league. I think that's probably a little bit overkill, especially with as good as some of these other leagues are.
Yeah, the math that I do on my hand here is you're going to have all 5. You're going to have 5 conference winners. 2 of those will be the SEC and the Big Ten, so they already factor into your number. You're probably going to get 3 Big Ten schools in Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon. you're going to get your ace. You're going to have. So, I mean, that is it's possible. It's possible. I think the ACC gets 2 teams. I think the SEC could get 5. Big Ten probably gets 3.
So that's 5, 5, 3, 2. That's 10. And then there has to be what, one power?
That'd be Big 12 champ and G5 champ.
So that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be interesting. And kind of looking at the rankings now, and I just, I'm trying to think, who is BYU Group of 5?
No, they're Big 12.
Big 12, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Big 12. BYU wins out, obviously, they're in.
Yeah, the G5 bid's weird this year because there's not really like it worked out well last year because of what Boise did. It doesn't really work out well this year.
Like if Memphis runs the table and goes 12-1, they probably deserve to be in.
Then it's probably Memphis's spot. Like I think your winner's probably going to come out of the Conference USA or the American.
Could be Navy.
Yeah, it could be. Navy has to go on the road to Notre Dame, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that would be, basically a elimination game either way. Yeah, it's interesting, to see, when you look at, because we talk about college basketball starting and they already have the bracketology up, which is ridiculous because there hasn't been one game played. Like, how are you telling me which teams are going to be like? I mean, you probably can figure out who the top seeds are because Purdue, Houston, Duke, and Florida are so good, and UConn's there. But can you let me play a couple games first? Can you let me get it's just because once again that shapes the narrative of college football, college basketball. It shapes the narrative of the season. Like if you're highly ranked, if the rankings didn't come out until whatever, Notre Dame probably wouldn't be number 12 right now. I mean, I don't know, maybe because once again they have close losses, but still, they were so highly ranked to begin the season. Plus, they made the final last year, but it is what it is. There's a big game late. There's not a lot of these. There's only a couple late games tonight. It's a little bit of a weird schedule. You usually get some late games. There's only 2. There's the San Jose State is hosting Hawaii. But really, the one late game that is massive on ESPN is Cincinnati and Utah. I mean, Utah's at home 11.5, and it's once again an elimination game. I mean, Cincinnati's still 5-0 in the Big 12. I mean, if they can win this game at Utah as a big favorite, and this line opened at 7.5 and now it's 11.5, that would be a huge statement for Cincinnati and really kind of keep them in the race to make this. Do you have any kind of feel on that game?
Yeah, I feel like this is probably where Cincinnati gets got. Yep. They've kind of been navigating their Big 12 schedule. They've had some close calls, but I just think this is a really, really tough spot for them. They're going on the road to Utah. Utah is a really tough
place to play.
It is a really good environment for how few numbers they have and relative to some of these stadiums across the country. It's nothing, but they make the noise like they got 100,000 in there. So that's not an issue. And then you think about the fact that Cincinnati is going on the road and they're playing late. Like it's tough when you play late and you're not used to it. Utah is a little more used to playing late. So I just think it's a tough spot. Utah can run the football really well with Devon Dampier. They've got their identity about them. Kyle Whittingham, it doesn't change with him. They know who they are as a football team. And I think this is the spot where Utah wins.
Yeah, that line movement from 7.5 to 11.5 is kind of indicative of what I mean. Obviously what the bettors think. Shoresby's got some crazy numbers. 20 touchdowns and 1 interception right now, and he's been playing well. And if they could find a way to win this game, I mean, obviously it's a huge win. But matchup predictors 80% to Utah, which is usually means it's going to be tough. And Rice Eccles is a really, really tough place to play at night. We talked a little bit about that Virginia Tech. At night in Utah, it's hard to breathe. You're up at an elevation a little bit. Or Salt Lake is, I forget how high Salt Lake elevation. I feel like
I believe it's at some
4,300. It's almost, it's not quite mile high, but it's not, it's still a tough place to play. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I would probably agree. Utah probably wins that. Is there any games that we didn't hit that you think could be interesting? I know we've covered basically all the ranked games. Is there any games that you think could be interesting here? New Mexico is at UNLV. That kind of an interesting game. The over under 62.5 on that. 70% chance for UNLV to win, and the line is only 5.5, which is interesting. Any kind of games there that you maybe some smaller conferences or whatever that you're focused on, or is it basically just the big games today?
So there's a couple of different ones. I'll give you a standalone game and then a big, more of a overarching storyline today. The one of the games that I'm curious about is South Carolina goes on the road to Ole Miss. This is the games that Lane Kiffin lost last year. When Ole Miss did not make the playoffs, these are the games they lost. They lost to Kentucky at home last year. They went on the road late in the year to Florida, and they lost there too. Like, these are teams that got them because last year they did not stay focused in their week in, the week out. When they played the big games, they played at their peaks. When they played the small games, they played down to their competition last year. This year more than any, I think for Ole Miss and that football team, it'd be as easier than anything else just to go like, hey, like what's going on with our head coach? Why should we even care? Like what's there's a lot of outside noise and a lot of distractions. It could have set them aside, but it hasn't so far. You beat Oklahoma on the road. You beat a ranked SEC team on the road. That's something you hadn't done under Lane Kiffin yet. You did it last week. Can you come home and can you refocus yourself for a little bit of a lesser opponent, but one that has the talent to beat you, especially at that quarterback position in Lenore Sellers? Because if you aren't focused on him and you let him stay upright, run around, and make plays, it can be a long day for your defense. And I'm not sure you're always going to match the scores if South Carolina's running up and down on you. I think Ole Miss will win, but they have to stay focused on that week-to-week approach, because otherwise this is a week that's going to get them the same way it got them last year against Florida and Kentucky.
Okay. And what's your other one?
The other one is the entire top half of the ACC goes on the road this week. And, I mean, it's not like you're guaranteeing upsets. All of them are favored in their games. Miami goes to SMU in the 12 o'clock window. SMU, not a great football team, but they flash at moments this year. So, Miami plays poorly like they did against Louisville. This game gets shortened up on possessions, and SMU's at home. You could very well find yourself in the fourth quarter saying, why is Miami down to SMU? And they're trying to play comeback again. The same can be said for Louisville going on the road to Virginia Tech. That's not an easy game by any measure. Louisville has definitely played better these last couple of games, but about a month ago, they were struggling. You want to see them continue to play well on the road at Virginia Tech. Virginia goes on the road to Cal. It's a mid-afternoon game there, but still that's a 7-1 ACC team, again, on the road. And then finally, you've got Georgia Tech on the road at NC State. And both of those two games that I just listed are inside of a touchdown on the spread, both sitting at 5.5 points in favor of the road team. So those are careful spots that those teams can very easily get got in, and it's something where while you feel like you have a pretty well determined top tier of the ACC, that could crumble after today, and so could their hopes of getting multiple teams into the college football playoff.
Yeah, I always think when you get to this, November especially, if you're looking for, and it's not just, it's not just this. It's like other sports too, soccer, whatever. You can kind of go through it. When you're trying to find an upset game, I think the first rule of when you're doing like a knockout like every week where you have to pick a team to survive, like survival pools. You don't pick teams, that play on Thursday night or in prime time as much as possible. And you don't pick teams that play on the road just because, you just don't know. Well, the road games are a lot tougher, I think. And, Miami's, you said Miami's going to SMU, and I know SMU's not, 5-3, they're 3-1 in the SEC, but they were in the playoff last year. Jennings puts up big numbers. I know he throws some interceptions and stuff, but he can put up some points. Obviously Vanderbilt, Texas, both teams are ranked. Indiana, no chance. We talked about Louisville, Virginia Tech. If that game was at night, I would say, I would be like, listen, man, that could be a big, upset watch. It's tough to play in Blacksburg at night. We already talked about Texas Tech and Kansas State. As we were doing this, I just put a bet in on UNLV because that line is 4 on my book, and I said like a 70% chance to win that game, and that line's down to 4. So something's going on. So I'll take a chance with that. But yeah, South Carolina's at Ole Miss. Got to win that game at home. You can't lose. Georgia Tech and NC State, I think, that was the other one. And there was one other game I was looking at on the board. I forget where it was. San Diego State's at home. They got to keep winning. They're 6-1. Just to kind of stay in that race. But, I think. Oh, sorry, Virginia Cal. We talked a little bit about it. Cal. You just don't know what you're going to get. They're 5-3. I mean, they're a pretty tough team. Virginia, I gotta say his name, Sagapolutelli.
Kiawe Sagapolutelli.
Sagapolutelli putting up some. He's got almost 2,000 yards passing. Throws some interceptions as well. But I think that could be a tough spot. Obviously, Virginia, got away with one last week in overtime. They've been in overtime 3 times, in their last 4 games, and the 4th game was 22-20. Virginia's beat UNC 17-16 in overtime. They beat Washington State 22-20. They beat Louisville 30-27 in overtime. They beat Florida State 46-38 in double overtime. Cal went to overtime last week at Virginia Tech. But at some point, there's this charmed run. These charmed teams, sometimes they keeps going forever. But a lot of times, the luck runs out, and they got to go and play early in Cal. I mean, it's 3:45 Eastern time. They're playing out there early, 12:45 on the West Coast. Is this a trap game? Is this a game where Virginia, who's unbeaten in the league, could struggle a little bit? And, I wouldn't be stunned to see Cal win that game, obviously, because every game has been really close.
Yeah, just what I'm going to say is, yes, they are lucky. Like luck plays a factor in it when you win that many games in overtime. But there is also a certain aspect of like you know how to win and you find ways to win. Yep. There's a certain resilience about that the credit has to be given. So, if you get late in the 4th quarter of a football game like this and the stuff you've done prior in the year, you feel like you're going to come back and win this football game. Cal may not always feel like that. Like Cal, I think has found a way to lose a couple games this year. So they have a really good resiliency about them, at least this year. they have. And so it makes you feel better in those closer games like that you're going to find a way, and your guys are going to come together, and you're going to find a way to come out on top. Now, doesn't always work like that. Belief only gets you so far. Talent's got to be there too. So they're going to run into some trouble tonight. I don't think they're just going to run away with this one, much like they ran away with any of their games.
Yes, no, they're going to fight. Yeah, that's and you see, because if they can win that game, they got Wake at home, Virginia Tech at home, and at Duke. And if you can find a way to go out there and win against a decent Cal team, and you keep kind of winning these close games, all of a sudden, you look up and you're 11-1 and you're in the mix. You got a chance because you're going to be playing, Georgia Tech there maybe, or maybe Miami gets. I don't know what the tiebreakers are. I guess we got to let that play out. But
I'll give you this because I've looked at it. Virginia beat Louisville, and Louisville beat Miami. So Louisville currently, because all three of those schools have one loss.
Mm-hmm.
So Virginia gets in over Louisville if they were to be tied. Louisville gets in over Miami if they were to be tied. I don't know what happens if Louisville were to drop one and Virginia and Miami were to be tied. I don't know who.
And Georgia Tech is unbeaten, so
Georgia Tech's unbeaten, so it doesn't matter for them right now.
Yep. It'd be interesting if they all have one loss and when they come to this thing. I don't even know if it's possible. Maybe they play each other or whatever. But I think Georgia Tech could make this a lot easier for everybody if they just win out.
Yeah,
and, they go 13-0 or whatever, and they're clearly locked into one of the spots. And at that point, if they're 13-0, they're probably top 4 anyway. So, and they're a dangerous team.
Georgia Tech's not out of the woods by any measure. The game they have today is very tough. Then they'll go on the road to Boston College next week, and that'll be what it'll be. Boston College is 1-7. But then they come back home. Pitt's a really good football team, especially since they made the change of quarterback. Their offense has been really, really good. And then they've got a game in Atlanta. Now that has no bearing on the ACC race, but
it's a massive game. Imagine
they're 8-0 right now. They can lose 3 of the last 4.
If those teams both go into that game in the top 5, man, Atlanta will be buzzing that weekend. It'll be buzzing anyway, but
I can't.
Buzzing.
Don't get me started on nothing drives me up a wall more than the fact that on Friday at 3:30 I'll be heading to the Mercedes-Benz Superdome instead of Bobby Dodd Field. That drives me up a wall. It's insane, but
is that game's Black Friday?
Yeah, 3:30.
Okay.
On ABC. But,
all right, well, that was our look through these games today. Make sure you like and subscribe and leave our comments and whatnot, and make sure you're checking in, following us on Instagram, Twitter, wherever you can find us. Matthew's the Instagram right there. X is right there. Next week we're going to try to be live on Instagram as we are able to do that now, and just have to line it up and do all this stuff. But we will try to do that for you and check in with everything. So, Matt, you're going to be on all week with Jim, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I will.
We'll talk a little bit about the Game 7 World Series, college basketball opening this weekend in college football. There's a lot of stuff going on, NFL, NBA, hockey. It's a lot of stuff going on. So
last day of the sports equinox, as they call it.
It's today, right?
It's today. Since Game 7's today, it's the last day, technically.
That's right. All right. We will see you next week.